Welcome to the Patriotic Pulpit. I'm asking the question today, is Kamala Harris, is she the Jezebel of American politics? A few years ago, I would say there was Hillary Clinton. She was the Jezebel of American politics, but now it seems that Kamala Harris has taken her place. Remember Jezebel, the wicked queen of the Old Testament? Ahab was the king. Jezebel was the queen. She was the one who controlled things, and she was the one who actually manipulated Ahab. When Ahab actually wanted to have a vineyard that didn't belong to him, she arranged the affairs. She made it happen. So also Joe Biden. Joe Biden's just an old man in the office. He's just a stuffed shirt. He doesn't do anything. Apparently he doesn't have any memory. He has cognitive decline, but there is someone who's there, and that is Kamala Harris. Is she the Jezebel behind the scenes? Several years ago, when Barack Obama was running for president the first time, Obama said that he believed that marriage was between a man and a woman. Now, that was his stated position. But once he was in office, he stated, well, no, he's changed his mind in that marriage is now between a man and a man. And he helped overturn the basic institution of marriage as has been honored by our country since its inception, the Christian value of marriage between a man and a woman. But Obama said, well, I think it's between a man and a woman when he was running for office. But when he got into office, he changed his tune, and so he helped push through his influence, homosexual marriage, and America has never been the same and is not going to be the same since those days. But here's the interesting thing about it. David Axelrod came out in his book, which was written several years after the Obama administration, and he pointed out, he said that actually all of that was simply window dressing. It was all fabrication. The first time that Obama said it was between a man and a woman, but he did it that way purposely in order to get his foot in the door to get elected. But once he was elected, he went back with his real position. His real position was that Obama has always been apparently in favor of homosexual marriage, homosexuality, and he wanted that to be enshrined in the law. But in order to fool the American people, in order to fool especially the Democrats, to get into office, he had to say, well, it's between a man and a woman. But once he's in office, then the mask comes off, and he's now in favor of homosexual marriage. So that's what David Axelrod said. He said that the advisors told him to say, don't come out and say I'm for homosexual marriage. You're not going to get into office that way. But once you get into office, then you can go along with the business as usual. That is, of course, the way that the Democrats consider the American people to be. The Democrat Party basically are the socialists of America, following the leadership of Karl Marx, Vladimir Lenin. Vladimir Lenin even said himself that the American people, or many people in the populace of nations, are simply useful idiots. Because they don't look into the background of individuals, they don't see what they have actually believed in the past, they don't go along with that, they go along with, here's a nice speech, here's a pretty person, and here's a person of color, we need a person of color in the office. All of this to say, this is exactly what Kamala Harris is all about. She has talked about, for example, mandatory gun buyback program, mandatory from the government, curtailing the Second Amendment. She doesn't care about the Second Amendment. She wants, of course, to ban fracking, to ban the extraction of oil in her own country, because she is a globalist, and she wants to be dependent upon foreign oil. She doesn't want fracking. She doesn't want offshore drilling. She doesn't want any of those things. She doesn't want energy independence. She doesn't want to honor the law. She bailed out of jail people who were rioting in 2020 that were burning down our cities, and the people who were actually accused of criminal acts, and she bailed them out of jail. That's the kind of person Kamala Harris is. She fought for homosexual marriage when she was the DA of California, or the AG, I should say, of California, the DA of San Francisco. She fought for homosexual marriage. She fought against marriage between a man and a woman. That's all what she's been about. She's against the basic values that we have as Americans. She tells us she wants to ban the filibuster in the Senate. You know what? This is interesting because there have been prominent Democrats come out and say, you know what? We're not for that, because all that is a power play to push through all of the agenda that you want. She's for the green agenda. She wants to shut down the energy independence of America, depend upon wind energy, solar energy. This is what Kamala Harris is about. And of course, how about the border issue? The border issue, she has been in charge of the border for 3.5 years, and they have thumbed their nose at the American law. The American law says that anyone who comes into this country must come in through the port of entry and gain access legally, and that's how legal immigration takes place. That's the law. But the Biden administration, Kamala Harris, the queen behind the throne, the Jezebel here, has actually ignored the laws, flouted it, put Americans at risk. Our cities are now in turmoil. We have 21 million illegals in this country. We haven't vetted them. We don't know where they come from. We know many places they do come from. The Venezuelan country of Venezuela has emptied their jails and bring the Venezuelan gangs in here, and they're now controlling cities such as Aurora, or housing projects or apartment complexes in Aurora, Colorado. This is Kamala Harris's America. So what is she doing now? You know what we hear all the time? Well, Kamala Harris is a flip-flopper on the issues. No, she's not. She's a liar. She's a liar. She's counting on the American people to be useful idiots. No, she doesn't believe any of the things that she now is saying as she's running for office. What she believes is what she stood on all of her life, being taught by her Marxist professor father that Marxism is the way to go. So she's in favor of the homosexual marriage, in spite of the fact that that was, at that time, against the law. She tried to block that in California. She's against the Second Amendment and for mandatory buyback programs. She doesn't believe it's the right of the American people to own firearms. As a matter of fact, in one Supreme Court decision which upheld the Second Amendment, she and a group of lawyers tried to get together to say and argue to justices that the Second Amendment does not apply to individual rights at all. Just as the Clintons have done in the past, they say, well, that Second Amendment is written for an official militia. Nonsense. In the founding era, every male over 16 years of age was a part of the militia, and they wanted the American people to defend their own country with the ability to own firearms and do it with force. She's not for that. So let's look at a couple of things. So basically, she's not flip-flopping on the issues. No flip-flop at all here. She is actually lying to the American people when she says, well, she's not for mandatory buyback gun programs. She's not against fracking. She's not wanting to force green energy on us. All of those things and more, she is lying. She says, I will secure the border. No, she's not for securing the border. We know very well what she has done. She has a track record. And what she is doing, she's counting on the American people to be useful idiots. So let's look at a couple of things here. She talks about freedom. She says she wants the American people rather, to be free. But what does she mean? She doesn't mean freedom in the sense of the founding fathers, that is, government, get out of our business so that the American people might be free to choose where they live, where to travel, what occupation they may have, and free to speak and free to worship. She doesn't believe in that. She speaks about freedom from violence. What does she mean by that? She means, of course, to come to those who are law-abiding citizens and remove their right to protect themselves from the lawless and unruly that are in this country. No, she's using freedom in a different sense than was used by the founding fathers. Here's another one. She was for defunding the police in 2020, which resulted in what? Chaos on the streets of America. She's for red flag laws. What are red flag laws? Red flag laws are unconstitutional snitch system in which one neighbor will snitch on another neighbor, telling the government, saying the law enforcement, well, this person over here I think is a dangerous person, and that person owns a firearm. That's a snitch system. That reminds us of Adolf Hitler's Germany is what it is. 2008, She was for the gun ban. The Supreme Court decision that I mentioned a moment ago that was D.C. and Heller, and she led a group of prosecutors who tried to convince justices that the Second Amendment does not protect individual rights. That's what she believes. This is where she stands. That's the Marxist that she is. That's the Jezebel that she is. And her Jezebelness comes out as she tells the American people, well, no, I've changed my mind and I flip-flop. No, she's not a flip-flopper. She's a first-class liar. Here's 2010. The AG of California. She was for more infringement on the Second Amendment. As a senator in 2016, she co-sponsored bills to enact universal background checks. In 2016, she was for the banning of assault weapons. And of course, she doesn't know what an assault weapon is. She means semi-automatic. That's how the Democrats speak about the guns. That is, about assault weapons. They're referring to semi-automatic, not assault weapons at all. They look like it, but they're not assault weapons. In 2020, she was for mandatory buyback schemes. That was way to the left of Biden. That's why she dropped out of the race. 2024, that was this year. She disenfranchised 14 million people, voters, who voted for Joe Biden to be the nominee. She has not had one endorsement from any of those voters. She has only had the endorsement from the power brokers. I want you to note this, that this alone shows us that what is controlling this country is a deep state. The power brokers are controlling what's going on in Washington, D.C. The Barack Obamas, the George Soroses, they put her up. They moved Joe Biden out of the way, and she had not one Democratic vote to get where she is right now. They don't care about the election process. They don't care about democracy or the republic that have been established by our founding fathers. And yet she is doing so well in the polls. It's hard to believe that that is what's going on. This is why, incidentally, that over 700 deep state operatives, bureaucrats in Washington, D.C., have endorsed Kamala Harris for president, because they are deep state Marxists, socialists, who want to turn America upside down, and they're doing a pretty good job of it. So moving past 2024, here's something interesting. I thought this is from 2024, this year. GovTrack tracks all the senators' records in Congress. And they showed that this is actually reaching back to when she became the running mate of Joe Biden, actually, in 2020. When she became running mate for Joe Biden, GovTrack dropped what they had on her record. That is, she was, by GovTrack, said to be the most liberal-leaning, the most socialist-leaning senator in the Congress, the most left-leaning senator. But when Joe Biden chose her to be his running mate, they dropped all of the scorecards for her, said, oh, we don't want to blacken her name. Now, that shows us a couple of things. GovTrack itself is controlled by the socialists because they didn't want her to have a black eye with the American public. Remember that comment by Vladimir Lenin? They want the American people to be useful idiots, and I'm afraid too many of them are. As DA in San Francisco, she tried to ban all gun shows within the city. As the DA in San Francisco, she supported a bill to microstamp firearms for the government to track who owns firearms. Here's something else that perhaps many people don't know, and that is in 2023, last year, there was an office opened in the White House called the Office of Gun Violence Prevention. It was a gun control office. Its goals in the gun control office was to ban assault weapons, which they mean semi-automatics, require safe storage, that is overreach, tell the government reaching into your home, telling you how you have to manage your home and how you have to store your guns, require background checks for all purchases, that way they can eliminate those on the right, They say it's only to eliminate terrorists, but they don't care about terrorism. They've let terrorists come in by the thousands into this country. They don't care about terrorists. They care about those on the right who are resistant to a socialistic government. And to eliminate, now here's something else, what the government, this is the Office of Gun Violence Prevention in the White House, to eliminate gun manufacturers' immunity from liability. And what is that? That will be enabling people who have been hurt by gun violence to sue gun manufacturers in order to put them out of business. It's a backdoor methodology to get rid of firearms in America. And in that office, they ban assault weapons, require safe storage in homes, require background checks for all purchases, eliminate gun manufacturers' immunity from liability. And who do you think is the head of that office in the White House? Jezebel herself, Kamala Harris. She's the head of that. Right now, she's the head of that. So don't let her fool you by lying to you about that she's in favor of gun ownership and she has a firearm. I doubt it. Here's something else regarding energy. 2019, she wanted to ban fracking. But now she says no federal ban on fracking. But then she says, I haven't changed my position. I haven't changed my values. We know very well where she stands. We know what her values are, and they are emptying of values in a Marxist state. Then here's something else. She brags about the Inflation Reduction Act. This shows us she doesn't understand what is inflation, nor does she think that the American people understand what inflation is. The Inflation Reduction Act actually was the increase of inflation because it caused the government to print more dollar bills. What is that? That is the definition of inflation. So it was the Inflation Increase Act is what it was. But she brags about being the tie-breaking vote on the Inflation Reduction Act. And of course, once again, the border just out of control. And as we've said so many years on this program, if you don't have a border, Trump says the same thing, and he's right on it. If you don't have a border, you don't have a country. And they ignore the border. They fly people over to different cities and they place them into different cities and causing chaos all over this country. Kamala Harris has overseen that. She's not for border enforcement, which is against the law of the United States. That's what's happening here. Her whole record, entire record, is absolutely a lawless Marxist record. She's a Jezebel in the White House. She needs to get outed.